Well, welcome everybody. I know you've carved out a little bit of your day, so thank you for doing that. Why don't we just get started now? And hopefully a few more people join us, but if not, that's okay. It'll be a good, intimate conversation. I'm Joel, obviously. You can see my name on the screen. I'm here with Mariana and Lindsay, and we're part of the team at the Prepared Montessorian Institute, which is Montessori Teacher Education Institute, Teacher Learning Institute. That does a whole lot of professional development for both parents and teachers, but we really are our mission is to sort of increase the number of people who are Montessori educators and finding those people out there who would love to be Montessori educators and would like to carve out a path for it. So what I thought we'd do is just share a little bit about what that pathway is to becoming a Montessori educator. Mariana is an early childhood Montessori educator, and she'll introduce herself in just a minute. And Lindsay is an elementary Montessori school educator. So we've kind of got age ranges all the way up from birth. Actually, we have programming for studying to be even a middle school or high school Montessori teacher and everything in between. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But before we dive into our coursework, maybe Mariana and Lindsay, you can say hi and a little bit about yourselves too.
So hi, so my name is Mariana. I'm here currently in Austin, Texas. I'm originally from Mexico, and I have been in Montessori almost all of my life. My mom worked at a Montessori school for 30 years, and that was my first opportunity seeing that. And professionally, I started as an assistant guide, very interested. This is what I wanted to do for my life, and I took my Montessori training early in my life. So it's been like 22 years that I started professionally in Montessori with my training. And since then, I've loved it, been in the classroom in bilingual settings, doing Spanish immersion and English immersion, in public schools as well, Montessori public schools, and then became a head of school. And now I have been in the training center for 5 years, supporting students. I'm very excited about working with adults that are learning about Montessori.
Thanks, Mariana. Hi, everyone. I'm Lindsay. My career was a little bit different from Mariana. I spent a lot of time in traditional education settings. I was a traditional elementary, middle school, high school teacher in public and private settings for about 13 years before I discovered Montessori, and then went back and did my own Montessori training and have subsequently been working with Prepared Montessorian, both on elementary teacher training and also developing some of our curriculum in the back end. So really, really love teaching, whether it's children or adults. And so I'm excited to get to know all of you.
Great, thanks, Lindsay. And just a little bit on my backstory is actually kind of similar to Lindsay's. I was a high school and middle school teacher, and to be honest, I didn't really take seriously early childhood education until, guess what? I became a dad. And I thought, wait, this makes a lot of sense. I need to understand how young children grow, and was just blown away with the depth of Montessori education, the thoughtfulness and the intellectualism in Montessori education that my sort of naive young self didn't appreciate fully. And it was really the scientific approach that Maria Montessori took to really understanding the way that children grow and then mapping on an educational experience that's right for that specific stage in development. That was the hook. Because what I saw was, if you set the circumstances correctly, children are capable of like way more than society generally thinks they're capable of. And I continue to be blown away by my own children, but by all the children who I've gotten to interact with. So I too am coming at this from an educator's mindset, and one who's trained to work with early education in the Montessori fashion, but with children of all ages in a lot of different ways as well. What we wanted to talk about a little bit is just sort of like why now to become a Montessori educator, and then a little bit about how we've designed our training courses, and then we'll get into the specifics of like, what does it take? What is our training course consist of, and how would you sort of go across that path? We'll leave a lot of time at the end for questions, but if you think of a question along the way that you want to make sure we get to, you can feel free to drop it in the chat. And we'll make sure that we answer everything that you're hoping to get out of this. So it would be the worst thing in the world if you have specific questions you want to get, and that's why you signed up for this, and then you don't get those answers. So please make sure that we give you what you're looking for. But like I was saying, let's start with sort of why now. I was sort of I'm watching the general trends, at least in a lot of Western countries, particularly here in the US, we're seeing what some people are calling the Great Resignation, which you may have sort of seen driving past restaurants and fast food places and retail shops all over the place. Everybody's hiring, and it's very, very hard to find people who are sort of just willing to do whatever work. Maybe they previously they worked at Target and they were fine folding shirts and restocking shelves, but now they want something a little bit deeper. They want something that's meaningful. And a lot of people that we're talking to are finding that they really love children. They really love helping other humans grow into flourishing human beings. And that sort of mission-oriented job is exactly what a Montessori teacher is. A Montessori teacher has the joy of being introduced to a great number of budding human beings and helping them find themselves and find their growth trajectories as children in this really rewarding and meaningful way. And you probably already know this, and that's why you're here. But what you might not know is that there are not enough Montessori teachers. There are not enough people who have the expertise to bring through the Montessori methodology into as many classrooms as there are in our country, but literally all over the world. And right now, particularly in Montessori education, there's sort of an upspring of interest from parents looking for alternative ways to educate their children, particularly coming out of the pandemic and understanding in how much time they were spending with their own children during different lockdown phases, that they really wanted to become more involved in their child's development and find educational pathways that match with their own parenting perspectives. And so the rise of popularity in Montessori schools for parents is growing, and yet there still are not enough Montessori educators. So it's really a great opportunity career-wise to sort of make this more meaningful shift, if that is what you're looking for, or just become a Montessori educator more formally, earn your diploma, because then sort of the job market is in your favor, so to speak. You will definitely have a lot of doors that are opened up to you. We're also happy to help you find those doors. We have a lot of job placement opportunities as well, but it's really great, because becoming a certified Montessori teacher means that you're unlocking not just something locally where you are, but people all over the country and all over the world are looking for Montessori teachers. And we're happy to sort of help you on your journey with that. So we've specifically designed our training pathways with a few principles in mind in order to sort of really prepare you for a future job, but also to help you in your current job right now if you're already working in a Montessori school. So our training is designed for working adults. And by that, I mean, it's designed to be something that you can take without putting the rest of your life on pause. We have a lot of courses in the evenings. We do a lot online. We do have some in-person components of our training, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So it's not something totally done at a distance. And even when we are at a distance, one of the great, I think, attributes of our training program is that we meet online, but have real tangible, concrete experiences wherever we are. So what I mean by that is we may meet in an online class setting, but everybody there will have Montessori materials. Actually, I have some like literally in front of me. They will have Montessori materials with them and be practicing together or in a classroom, practicing physically doing things, but connecting online. So sometimes when I share that we're an online Montessori training center, one of the questions I get is, how do you become good at doing something in person if you're just studying online? And it's through that sort of multifaceted learning approach that we have, creating concrete experiences through online connections with other adults. And our training program is really great for somebody who's currently an assistant teacher, for example, in a Montessori classroom, learning to see what they're doing already in their classroom and understand it on a deeper level through the lens of the Montessori training that they're learning along the way. But it's also great for people who are not currently working in Montessori schools. And we do have ways to support people who are sort of fast-tracked into leading Montessori classrooms before they're fully certified with their training, which is, I will admit, quite a challenge. But we have some sort of like add-on support systems for those who find themselves in those circumstances, because like I said, there is a sort of shortage of Montessori teachers. So people are able to earn a lead Montessori position even while they're gaining their expertise through their Montessori training. And we've got some great experience doing that. underneath that, I just a sort of last point that I wanted to share is that our training is really, I think, a healthy blend of Montessori theory. So understanding what is underneath the Montessori approach and why does it work. Montessori curriculum, which means you'll learn how to deliver each of the lessons that the children in your future classes or current classes need to be shown so that they can grow throughout the Montessori scope and sequence of lessons. But also, and this is where I think we are particularly interesting, I hope, not just sort of like, what does it look like when it's running in its perfect state, but how do you take something that's not a Montessori classroom and turn it into a Montessori classroom? Or how would you take a Montessori classroom that's really not functioning as well as everybody thinks it should be and improve upon it? So we do a whole lot with, helping children with behavioral issues, helping children with learning challenges, helping children who are the real children who are going to be in your classrooms, and how do you adjust your mindset? How do you make on-the-spot decisions that are best for your children based on those actual children that you have? And that's part of the training I'm really, really proud of. It's the theory, it's the curriculum, but it's also literally how are you going to apply it in your specific circumstances. So we have some, like I said, support structures, customized pathways, and things like that to really apply it to your own circumstances. I could talk forever, but I shouldn't. Mariana, why don't I throw it to you, and perhaps you can share with us a little bit about what it takes to become an early childhood educator through our training program.
Yes, thank you, John. So in our program, Early Childhood, we consider Toddler, Nido, and Children's House. So let me share my screen so I can show you a graph at a glance where you can see some of the components that we have in the training that Joel was describing. So for this is the same path that we have for ages 0 to 6. It is divided like this. 0 to 3 is the younger ages, and then we have Children's House. Is there someone, Heather, you have a question?
Hi.
Hi. Yes, so in here you can see that we have 4 components. And as Joel was describing, it's meant to be for people that are working currently, so you can do your working life and then also attend our training. And it starts with the foundational studies. So this is a blend of key components about Montessori that are part of the theory, practice, which is like really early. We have hands-on experiences for you. And also we are going to have some of the aspects that are going to be practical in your classroom. So it starts like this with the foundational studies. It's usually 3 weeks that you're going to be taking the training for 3.5 hours each day. And there's assignments, and then there's videos that you're going to be watching, and we have a lot of discussions. Part of what makes it our training a little bit different is that there's a lot of contribution. So you go, we talked about something, we come back, we analyze it, we reflect, we discuss, you have small groups, because we believe also that this can be an opportunity similar to the Montessori setting for individual conversations, but also small groups. So there's going to be a lot of that in those 3 weeks. And then after you have gone through your 3 weeks with a platform that we have for adult learners, you're going to have a time to go inside by yourself, have a week for you to internalize everything that we have learned and work on some independent assignments that we're going to give you. So this is like the example of the November cohort that we're starting. One of the things that we also want to do is offer every month different timings. Some people are like, oh, this morning or midday can work for me. Probably, I know we're offering in February. Oh, sorry, my PowerPoint started to go. Let me stop sharing. It's starting to just go by itself like this. So I'm gonna have to give me a second and then show it again. Okay. So as I was mentioning, one of the things that we do is that we try to offer different times in the day. So we may have it in the morning, we may have it at night. Some people really, this is a very popular time where the trainers come and they do their training during the night. So that's the first part. Once we start with a cohort, so you're gonna be with a group of students. What is really nice is that those groups, like, they form friendship and they probably work together as they move forward. But after this, you are going to decide the pace as you're going to be moving forward with your training. Let me share my screen to show you what's the next step that we have. And I'm going to go through this, as Joel was mentioning, a little bit fast, and then we're going to have questions. We move to what we call the self-paced independent studies. And there's no calendar, which makes it really nice. And as I was telling you, you go at your own pace. But also, it is important to keep track of everything that you're doing. And for that, we have designed a place where you can find all of the resources that you need. And here's a quick example of what we mean with this. Montessori for children is very concrete. And what do we mean? Maybe you have seen it. There's a lot of Montessori materials where the children learn math by touching. So we have created something concrete also for the adult learners that are working at a distance. So in here you find our digital albums that you have access to information, to videos, to written presentations. And this part of what Joe was describing, the curriculum. And what we want to do with this is that you also feel proficient as you practice with this. So you can upload a video with that, and then we can give you feedback. So here on the bottom, you can see this is a video that a student has uploaded where we can give them feedback. So you're working on your own, but you're getting some information and you're communicating with your trainers as well. There's also, as Joel was describing, part of what makes Montessori great is learning how to distinguish, how to support children. And one of the things that we have done is that we have also videos where you can observe a real situation, a classroom, where things are not going perfect, and what are things that the guide is doing, and you can learn from that teacher that is already there. Like how can you redirect a child? How can you inspire a child to work? And you can see that in a classroom without having to go and travel to a Montessori school. So it is great if you have a Montessori school close to you and you can do that, but it's also, you have the opportunity of observing a video that it's there for you and watching a little bit of those interactions. And then there's an opportunity when you're doing this component of your training, which is the self-paced independent studies, that you're going to be being in a Montessori classroom. So you want to practice with the curriculum, you want to learn that, you want to observe to get to know how to interact with children in the Montessori setting. And then you're invited to go to a Montessori school and be there with children, because this is where the true learning happens, right? I'm going to apply what I have learned. So this is this big component of our training that we're here to support you along the way. We have academic advising sessions and doing this at your own pace. We had one teacher that she got pregnant. She wanted to pause a little bit her training, and she was able to do that and then come back, finish her observations and do it. So this is a great part about the training, that you don't need to wait until another cohort starts to just continue with this part of your training. And then we move into 3 courses that we love. There are the continuing studies. So we learned a lot of things and we got a lot of information in the foundational studies. Now it's time to go deeper into that information. So what we do is that everything that we learn, now we are going to have bigger discussions. And what is really nice is now, if you're working already, you're going to come and you're going to like say, oh yes, I tried that. Now, how do I do it? Now we have bigger conversations around the things that we have learned on how to have a classroom leadership, how to support the children, how to guide them, how to give a presentation that is really connecting, and how to show them materials. So that's what happens in the continuing studies. And we offer it also, usually now it's at night. So you have 9 classes. You can choose to do it in 3 months. If you take the 3 classes, that's sometimes too much, 3 classes every week. But you can choose to take one at a time. So you take one course and then you take the other course. I know that next school year, we're going to be offering also a time really early in the morning. So you're going to have the option of doing it at 9 or doing it in the morning. And that's one of the things that we have for this continuing studies. And then we end our training once you have gone through foundational studies with a cohort, your self-paced independent studies and continuing studies at your own rate. Then you're going to join the in-residency studies. So that's 3 weeks in person. And that's what Joe was talking about. There's this component of being live in a classroom. Now you're going to come and we're going to be together for 3 weeks. Ideally, this is completed towards the end of your training. And we're going to be offering this for you to come and be with the trainers and be taking your courses at that time. One of the projects, we have a project that you finalize where you're going to put your knowledge now into practice, and you're going to be creating different structures that are going to help you in your daily work with the children. So that's in general the 4 components of the early childhood training, which is 0 to 3 and 3 to 6. And Lindsay, I know you have prepared something for the elementary program.
Sure, thanks, Mariana. So there's a lot that's similar with the early childhood and the elementary, and there's a lot that's different. So we can sort of take a breath and shift gears to elementary and talk about elementary training. So when we talk about elementary, we're talking about ages 6 to 12, or 1st through 6th grade, as you would call it in traditional settings. Some training centers offer just ages 6 to 9 or just ages 9 to 12 at the Prepared Montessori, and you're going to get the full 6-year age spread. Our training typically takes 2 years to complete, so 24 months. So you're looking typically at 4 semesters and then also 2 summers. And as Mariana mentioned, outside of COVID, those summers are in person. And at the elementary level, the 2 summers are 2 full-time weeks each. So you're looking at a total of 4 weeks across 2 summers. So when you're thinking about elementary Montessori teacher training, what you're looking at is a combination of theoretical knowledge in terms of our approach to children and our pedagogy. You're looking at classroom leadership, as Mariana mentioned, which is really the implementation in the classroom. And then you're looking at a really rich curriculum as well that goes across the subject areas. So math, science, language, history, geography, music, it's all in there across the 6 years. So let me share just a really brief map to just give you a little visual for what that looks like. So hopefully you can see my screen okay. I want to make it so I can see you as well. There we go, that's better. So what you can see here is just the course really divided into 2 years. So this is what the pathway might look like if you are starting in the summer. You would have your 2 weeks of in residency to get your feet wet with some theory and some curriculum. And then you would go through semester 1, semester 2. You would come back for another 2 weeks for summer 2, and then semester 3, semester 4. And roughly the first year of the course, you're going to be learning the content for lower elementary, which is ages 6 to 9. And the second year of the course, you would be learning the content for upper elementary, which is ages 9 to 12. And then you can see that throughout the course, you are doing your practicum, which, as Mariana mentioned, is your observations, your practice teaching, some of those hours. And so if we're looking roughly how many hours the elementary course would take, it's about 400 academic hours and about 800 practicum hours. Okay, and of those practicum hours, 480 of them are practice teaching, which if you're already in a classroom, you can do it there. It's not separate from the teaching you're doing in a classroom, and then about a minimum of 50 hours for observation. So that is kind of the course in a nutshell. The most common question I'm asked is, how many hours a week does it typically take? You know, how many hours a week do I have to expect to put into the elementary training? And what I'm hearing from our adult learners is about 8 to 10 hours a week is what it takes. If you're looking at our cohort meetings that happen every 2 weeks, you're looking at practicing with materials, and you're looking at learning the lessons that we're going through. And I wanted to give you, if I have time, Joel, you let me know, just a little quick glimpse into our learning platform, because I think that one of the most special things about our training is actually the amazing resources that you're going to get to use both during the training and when you're in your classroom. Because as Mariana mentioned, if you've ever seen a Montessori classroom in action, you've probably noticed that it is filled with these amazing scientifically designed learning materials, and that perhaps the key role of the guide or the teacher is to present these materials to the children. And so when you're learning, you're probably wondering, how do I learn all those lessons? Like, how do I master those? How do I remember how to do them all? Because at the elementary level, there are actually thousands of them. So we really got together as a team and thought, well, what would we want as guides and teachers? And I will show you what we came up with. what you'll have access to if you join Prepared Montessorian Training, and this is at the elementary or the early childhood levels, is you will have access to our altitude learning platform. And I'm hoping that you can see my screen here. Okay, let me call up the video panel again.
Yeah, we can
there
see
we go.
Yep.
Great. So what you can see here is just a little view of the list of units that you would have access to at the elementary level, and you'll have something similar in early childhood. So you can see these units or chapters of work. We've got all of these biology units. We've got, this is creative and performing arts, geometry, history, language, math goes on and on and on. The Montessori math is just amazing. Physical science and geography. So you'll have access to all of these units. And if you open up a unit, what you'll see inside, let's just pop into one at random. Here's fractions. When you open it up, you'll have access to a description of the unit overview, and you'll have a special, what we call a card, for each lesson in the unit, every single presentation that you would be delivering to children. And so if you were to open up one of these presentations, here we go, here's subtracting with same denominators. That's a lesson that you would give on fractions to an elementary age child. What you will have access to, first of all, is the written template for the lesson. So this is just what it sounds like. It's step by step that would tell you what are the prerequisites for this lesson? You know, what would a child have to have had beforehand? What's the purpose of the lesson? What are all the materials you need? And then it's a step by step of what you would do and what you would say as you presented this lesson, complete with these wonderful screenshots, these pictures, so you know exactly how to set up the materials. So you would have a written copy of the lesson to study and learn from and to guide you. And what I think is perhaps even more exciting is you would have a video recording of that lesson. Because sometimes you'll learn a lesson in training and you might not deliver it for, you know, a year or two. So we want you to be able to go back and have this beautiful example of that lesson. And I'm going to play just maybe 60 or 90 seconds of the lesson, just so you get a sense of what that looks like. Oh, hold on a sec. I have it on extra fast. Let me slow that down for you. Here we go. So it's going to tell you the name of the lesson there. It's going to show you where the lesson fits in the scope and sequence. And just remind you the main purpose of this lesson.
Do you think we can do subtraction with fractions?
Yes.
Let's try. Let's do subtraction with the ninths. Let's start with lots of ninths. This will be our minuend.
So that's just a teaser. I'm not going to show you any more, but you would have one of those videos for each lesson that you'll be learning in the training. A wonderful tool for you, both during training and as you go on with your work in the classroom. I'll hand it back to you there, Joel.
Yeah, thanks so much, Lindsay and Mariana. And I think if I was just to summarize what they were saying, the way that our training pathway works is generally periods of more intense training. You're going to start with like a couple weeks of full-time training, and then really personalized training experiences in the in-between time, where you are going to spend a few hours each week focused on learning all of the lessons and learning everything that's underneath it. And then there will be other concentrated periods of training, and then periods of training where then you can manage your time in that same in-between period. And you do have lots of access to, you know, these training resources and your trainers and the people who are helping you along that whole pathway. And that is a distinct factor, and one that I hope helps you sort of stay working and continue your path of learning along the way. I think that's
Joel, I'm going to just jump in with the elementary, just for clarification, that there was a question about how much of it is flexible. Because of the nature of the curricular materials in the elementary, we do move through them as a group. But we have, as Mariana mentioned, certainly had adult learners who have said, you know what, I'm going to take a semester off. I've got something else going on in my life, and then I'm going to jump back in and complete my training. So it is kind of progressing together, but there is flexibility if something's happening in your life to step away and then come back in.
Thank you for sharing that. I had a couple questions that came through in the chat, and I think we were able to address them throughout the chat. But a couple things that are some themes of questions that we get frequently is, how does my school support me in this if you are working in a school? And a lot of the program is us observing Montessori classrooms, us meaning you, as you're going through the program, you'll want to observe in Montessori classrooms, and you'll want to do practice teaching in the Montessori classroom with children. You'll also want to use the Montessori learning materials when there aren't children around. So a lot of what schools do typically is open up the classroom environment for you on sort of off hours, so you can use the Montessori materials and practice before you're working with children. And then very frequently, you can do your practice teaching component with children while you're actually, quote unquote, on the clock. So a lot of schools fold this into your actual job. So, and we are happy to work with schools and figure out ways to do it. So your work with children can sort of account for your learning, and you don't have to put aside time to not earn income, because I know that can be a big challenge going through a training program like this. During those concentrated periods of study, which are not very long, they're usually either 2 weeks or 3 weeks at a time, you do need to make sure you're arranging with your school to take the time off to be present during those online meetings that we have, because that's where we really get into the core of the programming, that we need to do that more independent work a long period of time. Very logical question there too. Well, what if you don't work at a Montessori school? So there are certain things we can do. One is we can pair you with a Montessori school. We do have a partnership with Guidepost Montessori Schools that has 90 schools around the country. And so we can very frequently find one that's near to you. Not always though, they're not in every neighborhood. And so we have ways that we can connect with local Montessori schools to invite you to at least do that student teaching, that practice teaching component of the training. A lot of times schools, that's sort of industry standard. So a lot of times schools will welcome in learning educators so that they can do that practice with children. Now they might not say, but you can also come into my school at 7 p.m. and practice using my expensive Montessori materials when no children are around. They might not do that. So we do have materials kits. So we can ship to you Montessori learning materials. They're versions of the same things you would find in Montessori classrooms, and so you can use that in your own home. And a lot of our educators do that as well. And as Mariana was also mentioning, part of the classroom observations can also be done through video observations of existing Montessori schools we have relationships with. So there's sort of no getting around working with children when you're at that stage, but all of the other stages of it, we've tried to find creative ways, if you're not working at a Montessori school, to help you still get access to those learning experiences. And as I was saying, we really want to make sure that you can get your questions answered. So don't be shy. Feel free to ask us anything that you might be thinking of. I see a couple coming through. And if you think of questions later, as Bree's asking here, of course, you can always email us. You can email us at hello@preparedmontessorian.com. You can put in questions into our website too, if you forget that. I bet you Han will write this. Yep, I knew she would. Han's amazing. You can write it into the chat. And I also do have a couple questions coming in, sort of direct message. So maybe I'll answer that to see if it would be helpful for the whole group. Somebody's asking about accreditation of our program, which is something I did fail to mention. We are accredited by MACTE, M-A-C-T-E, and they are the only accrediting body recognized by the US Department of Education that accredits Montessori teacher training programs. So another way to say that is, if you go to any Montessori teacher training program that is accredited, it holds the same accreditation that we have with MACTE. You may have heard of a lot of affiliated Montessori training centers. There are some Montessori training groups out there, affiliations, I don't really know exactly the right word to call them all the time. The largest ones are AMS, which stands for the American Montessori Society, and AMI, which stands for Association Montessori Internationale. It's international, so not in English. These two are commonly sort of misunderstood as accreditations. They're not accreditations. They're actually just affiliated training center networks. And so we are outside of those networks as an independent training center, but we hold the same accreditation that those training centers that have. And our the reason for that is because we find that, we would like teachers to be able to access careers anywhere in the world. And MACTE is sort of a consistent factor, a sort of third party out there who's validating who are the training centers with quality. And we're very proud to be one of those. So you can look at MACTE a little bit more. You'll find us listed out there. You'll also find other MACTE training centers, and you can figure out who are the ones that do it a little bit differently than each other. And you can find the one that matches on with your own personal interest there.
And Joel, we do have a question in the chat whether MACTE is recognized internationally. And my answer to that would be, you always need to do your own research into the country where you'd like to work and the schools where you'd like to work. But I can tell you, for instance, in the elementary training, that we absolutely have adult learners from Thailand, from Africa, from Russia, from different countries in Europe. And so they're pursuing the training because where they're living, the MACTE certification is recognized. So you'd want to do your research, but there are definitely countries around the world that do recognize MACTE.
Even to sort of double down on that, the Montessori education world is a little interesting, where there's actually no country that I know of, and definitely not the United States, where there's any sort of regulation that you have to have a certain Montessori certificate or diploma in order to be eligible for a job. So what that means is that every school has their own standards. So every country has their own standards, every school has their own standards. So if you have a school that you've targeted, you would like a job at this school, you may want to ask them, sort of what are the training requirements that I can have to be eligible to work here on a very individual basis. Now, we happen to know a lot of these answers as well, so you feel free to come talk to us and we'll sort of help you. My main goal is to help you achieve your sort of Montessori educator goals. And so we've gotten a lot of industry knowledge to help you put those connections together if you have some questions. Julia's got a good question too. Do you have information about the path to becoming a guide at ATI? So ATI stands for the Academy of Thought and Industry. This is another one of our partner school networks. And that is a middle school and high school Montessori program. And we have been talking a little bit more about early childhood and elementary. We do have an adolescent training program. I'm like on the edge of making a big announcement about this summer. So hold on tightly about that. I can't really say much more than that. But absolutely, there are fewer, but actually very, very fascinating Montessori middle schools and high schools out there. And we do think that there's a whole lot that we can draw upon from Montessori's teachings that apply really, really well to teenagers today, and helping them find their own agency and choosing their own pathways in their own life and learning in what interests them, but also what's important for every person to know. So we'll definitely help connect that, but I will say a little bit more to come on the adolescent training, the middle school, high school training in just a couple. Check back in January, beginning of the year. I think I'll have a big announcement for you there.
And I think we have a question about the in-person. Someone asking, Shafa asking where that's going to take place.
Yes, good question. So we're definitely in sort of limbo mode with our in-person training components as, coming out of COVID. As Lindsay was saying, we do have adult learners from all over the world. And so there's big challenges about sort of traveling and coming all together. So everybody who's joining in our program right now, we are recommending that they plan to join our in-person trainings, which will begin the next academic year. So that means September and moving forward. So Lindsay, you can talk a little bit about elementary in particular, but before I get to that point, anybody who's started in our training already, which I think is the case that you're mentioning, Rhodes, we're not changing the rules on you. So you started during sort of COVID times, then you've got COVID times to finish your whole training, which means you can do the in-residency replacement program that we've been doing at a distance while we can't meet in person. Everybody who's joining us now, we're encouraging you to plan for the in-person components, but we understand that there are individual circumstances. So if that's something that would be prohibitive, come talk to me. We'll try to find customized paths. For elementary, since we do go through the scope and sequence very regularly throughout that program, Lindsay, maybe you can share a little bit more about the future.
Yeah, as Joel said, we are planning, to have the virtual option definitely this summer, but we're feeling, optimistic that as of summer 2023, that we will be in person. Historically, that has been at our training center in Southern California. I think it's very possible that we would have other locations as well, depending on demand. But historically, it has been here in Southern California.
Yep, that was the actual question that I didn't answer. So thanks, Lindsay, for helping make sure that I did. We are interested in bringing training to people, not only having people come to us in Orange County for those trainings in Southern California. So if you've got a lot of interest in it being in a certain location, let us know. There's a process for us to open a site in different locations, but we're exploring ones. Again, future announcements there, but if you have strong feelings, like come to Virginia, then let me know. All right, well, I think, I'm happy to stay on for a few more minutes, but I do appreciate all the time that you've already spent joining us. And I know whenever I attend something like this, or I'm trying to wrap my head around something I may do in the future, I always leave and then have a bunch of questions that flood in after I've hung up. So if that happens to you, as we said, send us an email, hello@preparedmontessorian.com, or you can send us a little question on our website. There's lots of different ways to find us. We're very, very happy to help. Another thing that I'm really proud of, some of our team doing this is on here, Yufei, Becca, Han, in particular. If you want to talk to us, like, you will talk to a real human being, and it might be Yufei, Becca, or Han. It'll be somebody. And so don't be shy to reach out. We're very, my passion is making sure that all the reasons you might say no to taking a leap you really want to take, there's a solution for. I like moving all those barriers out of the way. So come talk to us, and we'll try to find something that matches on with what your goals are. With us or with anybody, we're happy to help you on that pathway. So thank you for attending. If you wanted to stick on, I'll stick on for a few more minutes, but if you need to jump off, then I appreciate you taking the time, and we're here, so let us know if you have any more questions you think of.
I had one question. Sorry, I could not type. My daughter is with me.
Yeah, of course.
With the timing you had mentioned, is it like we can join anytime, or we have to choose a time and then we can only do that? And also with the foundation classes, like we have to choose when we want to take it and finish it in that 2-week period, right?
Is this for the early childhood, Akshasa? This is for 0 to 6?
Yeah, 3 to 6.
Yeah, so go ahead, Mariana.
Yeah, so Akshasa, what you can do is, like, we offer every month a new cohort. So at that moment, you do need to join with a group. So you need to check the calendar on our website. We already have the offerings that are coming up, November and January and February. And where you think it's convenient for you to start, you sign up there. And that's where you're going to start, like with this foundational studies. After that, then for the early childhood, you have the flexibility of going at your own rhythm, and we will be supporting you on that. But for the first part, yes, it is in a group with a calendar and a specific time.
If you're curious, for elementary, we start cohorts 2 to 3 times a year as well. So we're trying not to make you wait forever to get going if you are interested.
That's right. And we hold them, typically our meetings in elementary are at sort of 4 o'clock Pacific, 7 o'clock Eastern, if you live in the United States. And so they're typically after school or early evening so that they work around your daily work schedule. But we do have some very committed adult learners who are signing on at 2 o'clock in the morning and different times and making it work.
Another thing I'll mention is that we have each of our training programs starts with one of those more intensive periods of full-time training. And during that time, part of what we're trying to do is give you the foundational knowledge that you'll use the rest of your time as a Montessori educator. But another thing is that you're trying to understand is this right for you? Is this something that you'd like to do in a long-term period? So in a certain sense, we'd love for you to be committed from day one to, to completing this pathway. But we also know that it is a lot of work, and it's something that you do need to feel is connected with your viewpoint and your soul and the type of work that you want to do in your life. And if you find that that's not the case, that's fine. So if a lot of people who are sort of in that circumstance are like, I kind of want to do it, it's it's a lot of money, it's a lot of time. Am I ready for this leap? You can maybe just get started and then figure that out later. You can kick that down the road a little bit, and we're happy to help. Like I said, if it's not lining up with your values, then it's not worth your time. You're not going to enjoy yourself, and that's the reason we have some very committed learners signing on all the time, is because when it does click, when it does connect with who you are and what you want to do in the world, it's fascinating content and great people to learn it with. Well, thank you all so much. We do appreciate you taking the time, and I know the wheels are turning, so let us know what else we can help you with. Lindsay and Mariana, thank you so much for joining too. You can tell how wonderful the people are that I get a chance to work with. So thanks for being you, and thanks for joining.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day.